Hello everybody, thank you so much for tuning in today. Today's video is going to be a fun one, and we are going to be talking about the new offlane in patch 7.14 and how to win the offlane consistently. As you may know, the previous offlane meta involved a lot of creep pulling. Usually at level 1, a hero would drag the creep wave back to their tower in between their tier 1 and tier 2 tower, and the carry would have to either tank the creep wave or take his creeps under tower or between his towers, and it created this really weird situation at level 1. But it was necessary to do that for offlaners because otherwise they would get completely zoned out of lane and not have any experience, and the enemy carry would have a huge lead on them. So in 7.14, the patch brought in a change that the first creep wave no longer draws aggro on the side lanes until those two creep waves meet each other. However, in true Dota fashion, I have been figuring out a way to abuse this new mechanic and still get an advantage as an offlaner, or as a roaming support for your offlaner if you would prefer to continue roaming and just let your offlaner solo the lane. Dual lanes have been really popular in 7.14, but I think that if you pick specific heroes and do specific mechanics, you can still actually solo offlane pretty effectively. All right, so the first example that we're going to look at is involving Earthshaker, and you can see that I have the starting items of a Smoke of Deceit. This is very important. I have some clarities, regen, and a stout shield because I'm going to be offlaning. And a lot of you may be like, how is this Earthshaker going to be laning against a Monkey King? That seems like a really terrible matchup. And it would be if there was no way for me to manipulate the creep waves. Basically what's going to happen is we are going to, at 20 seconds or so, we're going to smoke up somewhere where the enemy can't see us, and we're going to run up here to the enemy safe lane spawn, and as soon as the creep spawn, we are going to block the lane. And what this does is, as you can see, fissure lasts for 8 seconds. So these creeps are stuck here for 8 seconds. And that means that our creeps have an 8-second lead time on the safe lane creeps. It will force the creeps to go under tower and get hit by the tower, and they will get cleared out while all of these enemy creeps are alive still. And at the same time, I'm going to block this wave again. Again, I had 2 clarities, so I'm going to use both of them. I don't know if you necessarily need to do this. I think you could probably get away with 1 clarity, but there's enough gold to have 2, so you might as well have 2, especially on a hero like Earthshaker. And we're going to block these creeps. So then, this entire wave is alive. None of them are in deny range. And there's a second wave of creeps coming, and yet this second wave of creeps is now being delayed. So yes, Monkey King was able to get a full wave of experience. However, he was splitting it, and he was under tower without a quelling blade, which means that he was only able to get 1 last hit against the tower. So now I'm getting creeps under tower, and I'm going to do my best to last hit them. I get the first couple, and we have a second wave coming in. And ideally, actually, if I had a ward, I would probably want to block this camp as well on my way back from blocking this creep wave, because then it would guarantee me a 3rd wave of creeps. And they literally can do nothing because you can't aggro my creeps as they run into tower until they meet this creep wave. Okay, so we're going to hop into a demo lobby, and we are going to showcase a few different heroes that you can do this offlane creep manipulation with. And the first one is going to be Clockwork. And I'm actually pretty sure that this one is going to get patched out pretty quickly, but while it's not patched out, go ahead and use this to win your lane and get some hopefully free MMR in the process. Another thing that I wanted to mention is that I'm doing all this from the perspective of an offlaner, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized that a lot of the heroes that can do this creep manipulation end up being pretty good 4 positions as well, which means that you could run a much greedier offlane, or an offlaner that needs to get, level 2 or 3 before they can function in lane, and this would allow you to do that for them while still being a roamer and maybe not having, a Clockwork or an Earthshaker offlane, which could be not the best situation for your team sometimes. All right, so once this creep wave spawns, you're just gonna drop your cogs, and the creeps will start attacking your cogs. So that delays them by a good few seconds. Now you're gonna run up here, and generally the other team will be running to try and stop you from doing this, but you can just go ahead and run up here like this. You can cog again, run up here, and then you'll just TP to your tower with your TP that's now off cooldown. And you'll see that the creep wave has been delayed to the point where your creeps are now under tower, being hit by the tower. And you can actually even just sit over here so you don't get zoned, so you don't get harassed. And you can just wait for these creeps to push up. And now you're very close to your tower, which is nice. So you can just kind of, work on denying your creeps, because this is what you want to do. You want to deny your creeps so that you keep the equilibrium here and, get some last hits and deny. And this is why Stout Shield would be good, because what you're gonna want to do then is you're gonna want to tank it right in front of your tower so you can freeze the wave. You still have two range creeps here, so you're gonna run up here as Tusk. You're smoked, and we can see that the shard duration is only 4 at level 1 now. So that means with Tusk and some of the other heroes that we'll look at, you're gonna actually have to block the creeps first. So you're gonna have to, practice your creep blocking skills, because you want to slow them down, because your shards are not long enough in duration to effectively pull this off. Maybe you're walking along here, you drop a ward to block, and we can see that with Tusk, you really have to do that block because we didn't get the creeps all the way under tower. So this is not necessarily that good of a situation, because these creeps are all taking damage, which means that they can still be denied from the offlaner. And obviously each deny is bad. So I would probably need to have blocked even a little bit harder than I did there. Maybe start a little bit closer to the ramp and try and slow the creeps down even more. But you can still see that we're getting a double range creep here, which is going to allow us to then freeze the wave in front of our tower if we want to as an offlaner. So while that wasn't the best example of how to do this with Tusk, it does show that it will still work, because basically your goal is to get 2 range creeps, because then it will push. And now we have the lane in a nice spot, and we even have this camp blocked so that we're going to get an additional wave of creeps before they can, deward and start pulling again. So with Undying, this is really important. You're going to want to drop your tombstone here as soon as the creeps are in range, because you want as many spawns of the zombies as possible. And if you do this correctly and you place the tombstone in the right spot, you should be able to get 4 full spawns of zombies. And if you are close enough, actually, you'll even get the creeps to start trying to attack your tower or your tombstone and delay the wave even more. So as you can see, we really delayed the creep wave. We got these creeps under tower, which is what we were trying to go for. The only problem with Undying is that the tombstone does a decent amount of damage to the creeps, so they will be deniable a lot of the time, but it will still mess up that first wave of creeps for the enemy carry, and in all likelihood will also get the creeps pushing towards your offlane tower. One other thing that's really important about this is that you probably, if you're doing this as a position 4, you probably want to do this and then you want to just leave the lane, because the whole point of doing this is so you get free experience for your offlaner. So you don't want to just like stand here in trees and help them deny and soak a whole bunch of experience, because you're actually doing this, to mess up the safe lane and get a lead for your offlaner, because that is what will happen. Because there will be supports here trying to harass your offlaner out, and there will be splitting experience on the enemy side while your offlaner gets solo experience, and that's what you're going for. So, if you're a position 4, do this little trick and then go somewhere else and harass another lane, because you'll see that the supports will be stuck in this lane because of your trick. So you'll actually have a better opportunity to then harass one of the other lanes without support showing up. So one other hero that I thought would be kind of interesting to mess around with in the offlane is Darkseer. Darkseer is a hero that's been having a lot of trouble seeing play in the offlane because of how Ion Shell works and how carries generally just deny all the creeps that the Ion Shell is affecting, which makes it really hard to even get any experience or gold in the lane. So you're going to Ion Shell the Archer, and then you're going to try and follow them. And you could run into a tower and you pop your salve so that you can tank the tower before the enemy gets to you. You're going to re-Ion Shell the Archer, which will continue killing those, and try and just follow them. If the enemy is zoning you, that's okay, but you can see that I've already got more than half a level. And by the time the creeps get up here, you're going to have, you know, a fairly weak creep wave on the enemy side. Maybe you can just leech experience enough to have now level 2 with Surge, and your creeps will be under tower getting hit, and then you can kind of play the lane as a Darkseer normally would play the lane. But again, you're forcing the enemy carry to tank either the creeps or the tower, and you know, with Darkseer, maybe you can even Ion Shell these creeps and put a lot of pressure on them. And really, in conclusion, but what you're really going for is you want your creep wave to be all the way under the enemy tower before the creeps meet, because that will allow the enemy creeps to always have an advantage over yours, which will cause them to push towards your offlane tower and then allow you to freeze the lane right here by tanking the creeps until your next wave of creeps come. And you really want the wave to just stay like right here as an offlaner for as long as you possibly can. So whether you block this camp with a ward on your way back, or you have somebody else do it, or you're the roamer and you're blocking the wave as an Earthshaker or a Tusk or whatever for your offlaner, then on the way back, you know, try to block this camp so that you can get as much extra experience as possible. And I think that you'll find that this will make the offlane much, much, much easier. And if you notice that you have teammates who are playing offlane and feeding a lot, then, you know, pick an Earthshaker, pick a Tusk, pick a Clock, even an Undying, and do this weird creep manipulation mechanic to get them some free experience and levels. And then again, it will free you up if you are playing a roamer to then go other places, because the supports will be trying to deal with the creep equilibrium by attempting to pull or find your D ward or just zone you out away, or zone your offlaner out away from the creeps, which will then free up the other two lanes to be susceptible to ganks from you and the other support. All right, guys, so thank you for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. I had a lot of fun figuring these out, and I've been using specifically the Earthshaker one a lot in pubs. I think I've won like 9 out of 10 Earthshaker games in the last couple days playing offlane Shaker, which is, you know, not necessarily thought of as that strong of an offlaner except in very specific situations. But all I did is just, you know, block the creeps and then froze the lane right here, and I was able to get just as much experience as everybody else in the game, and I was even able to get plenty of last hits so that I had a nice and early blink dagger timing on my Shaker. So I hope this helps, and I hope it wins you some MMR before it undoubtedly gets patched. At least stuff like the cogs and the tombstone I expect to be patched if and when the developers find out about this. Earthshaker one, I don't know how they would change that. The Tusk one, I don't know how they would change that without modifying how those spells work. So those ones will probably be pretty reliable into the near and perhaps even distant future. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time, and go win some MMR.